Hey y'all, sorry I couldn't be there today, but we are going to go over the same thing that we would have done had I been in class. Go ahead and open up the modules. We're going to take a couple notes in this video, and then in the next video, I'll actually go over the daily that you're going to turn in today. So click on modules in Canvas and go ahead and click on August 27, today's notes, and open those up. We are going to talk about a new topic today, so make sure you get these notes jotted down and saved into Canvas so that later on when I do get back, we can make sure we go over and review this. Today we're going to talk about calculating overtime pay. How do you calculate overtime pay, and do you get paid the same rate if you work extra hours? All right, so overtime pay. What is overtime pay? When you work more than the regular number of hours, your employer might pay you overtime pay. Usually, most of us, when we work overtime hours, we get paid what is called time and a half. That's the overtime rate. Time and a half is 1.5 times your hourly rate. So let's say you get paid $10 an hour. Your time and a half pay, your overtime rate, is going to be $15 an hour. It's 1.5 times your hourly rate. Sometimes, not often, but if you work on holidays or if you work on Sundays, your employer might give you double time. So there's a difference between overtime and double time. Double time is exactly what it sounds like. You get paid twice the amount. Over, oh, excuse me, I'm so sorry. Overtime pay is when you get paid 1.5 times your regular pay. So we have our two formulas to calculate, and we're actually going to use them on each example that we do. Those two formulas are here. If my pen would want to work. Overtime pay is your overtime rate times how many overtime hours you work. Now, I will say this, most of us work 40-hour weeks. Like that's the full-time week, 40 hours. Any time that you work over 40 hours is what's considered overtime. For example, let's say you work 45 hours in 1 week, right? That means that you have 5 overtime hours. You don't have 45 overtime hours, you only have 5 overtime hours. It's how much hours you have over your regular hours, right? And for most of our examples, that's going to be 40 regular hours. We also are going to talk about your total pay. Your total pay is your straight time pay plus your overtime. Well, what does that mean, Miss James? Well, for this example, we're saying that you work 45 hours, right? Let's just say, hypothetically, that you make, my pen is not working right now, it's charging, so I'm using my finger, $10 an hour. For the first 40 hours that you work, this is harder than I thought. For the first 40 hours that you work, you get paid $400. That is your straight time pay. That is how much you get paid at your regular rate for your regular hours. But you also have 5 overtime hours, right? So for that overtime, you're getting paid time and a half. Your rate is higher. Your time and a half rate is going to be 15, and you worked 5 overtime hours. 5 times 5 is 25, so you carry the 2, that's going to be $75. So your total pay is your straight time pay plus your overtime pay. So this person's check would be $475. And I know I just did a whole lot on this one screen, but I just wanted to show you the difference between what we did last class and what we're doing today. Last class, we calculated the straight time pay, which was, sorry, still trying to work with this pen. This is your straight time pay. It's your regular pay times your regular hours. Your overtime pay, which is what we're doing today, is your time and a half pay times your overtime hours. So just make sure you understand the difference between those. So here's our first example. And like I said, I tried to write those steps on each example so that you kind of can get used to doing one step at a time. This one says Alan is paid $8.20 an hour for a regular 40-hour work week. His overtime rate is 1.5 times his regular hourly rate. This week he worked 40 regular hours plus 10 hours of overtime. What is his total pay? So we're trying to figure out what is the total pay. What is his final check going to be? First thing we got to figure out is what is his straight time pay? What is the amount that he's getting paid for his regular hours? So his work week, it tells us his work week is 40 hours. His normal regular work week is 40 hours. And he gets paid $8.20 per hour. So that means for his regular work week, he gets paid $328. This is his straight time pay. Regular hours, regular pay. Now, the overtime pay is different. For overtime, always remember you get paid more, so your actual pay rate should go up. How many hours of overtime did he work? It tells us 10. Now, we got to figure out the rate that he works for his overtime. So, in your calculator, we have to figure out what is his overtime rate. It's 1.5 times his regular pay. That's how you write 1.5 as a decimal. Half is 0.5. So if we type that into our calculator, $8.20 times 1.5, it's going to tell you that his new pay rate for his overtime hours is $12.30. He makes more for his overtime hours. You don't get to say paid the same amount. So we're going to multiply that overtime rate times how many hours he worked of overtime. That's going to give us a total of $123. So you found his straight time pay, his regular pay at his regular rate. You found his overtime pay. So now all you have to do is find his total. You're going to add both of his pays together, and that's going to give you a total of $451. So the only step that we're adding is step 2. Well, 3 is we're kind of adding 2 because we add them together. But we've already done step 1 last class. That's straight time pay. That's what we know. Overtime pay is the only thing that's a little different. And the one thing you got to remember is make sure you multiply your pay times 1.5. Your pay is what changes, not your hours. All right, so let's do these 2 examples. I'm actually going to skip this big chart. If you want some extra practice going over overtime, we can work on some of those together. But we're going to do one more example, and then the next video will actually go over the daily. No, we'll do these 2 examples, and then we'll go over the daily. All right, so the first one, Josie makes $9 an hour. She works 40 regular hours and 6 hours at time and a half. Anytime you see time and a half, think of OT. That's the overtime. All right, so step 1. First, we got to figure out her regular pay at her regular hours. She gets paid $9 an hour. She works a regular work week of 40 hours. 9 times 40 is going to give us $360. That is her straight time pay. Next, we have to figure out what her overtime pay is. Now, remember, for overtime, our pay rate should increase. She's not making $9 an hour anymore. Her pay rate is going to increase by 1.5. So we have to figure out what is 9 times 1.5. That's her new pay rate. So her new pay rate is $13.50. And it tells us that she works 6 hours of overtime. That gives her a total of $81. Josie's total pay, remember you add those 2 numbers together, her straight time and her overtime pay, and that gives you a total of $441. The important thing to remember is how to find the overtime pay rate. Make sure you multiply your pay times 1.5. All right, so like I said, I'm not going to do this entire chart. I can sit here and work out a million examples. The only step we're adding on this one is the actual overtime hours. We've already done straight time pay last class. So go ahead, open up daily number 3. In the instructions, you'll see links for the videos to help you go over the questions for the daily.